You know, I never minded the initials that people would put on used game cartridges. You know, you go to GameStop or Blockbuster back in the day, and they often, you know, if you bought a used game, every now and then someone would leave their old initials. And honestly, I've kept a few cartridges. There was my copy of Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time actually has a person's phone number on it. So yeah, I'm not gonna put that one out, you know, on the camera. But you know, I never minded that. I know some collectors are like, they make a big deal about no signatures on the cartridge, but you know, it's interesting that the value of a kid wanting to play the game is, I don't mind if your initials are on it, you know, and stuff like that. I will say though, I wish whoever's controller this was, they left some insignia, some type of business card, fax number, because I've had this since around 2004. And when I bought a copy of The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, which actually didn't have initials on it. I wouldn't mind either way, but I got the golden cartridge, the holographic one, which seems pretty rare from what I've gathered. But I'll never forget getting that, which again, that's its own experience, going to the used game store, getting the game you're looking for, and you're like, whoa, nice, cool, holographic. I didn't even know Majora's Mask was made in a cartridge like that, right? And then I was like, I need a new controller, so I bought this. And this I still use to this day for competitive Smash 64 and 64 games in general. And we're talking like 360 shortcuts on Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, you know, where Link does the spin attack, which is the same shortcut input for, you know, Zangief, T-Hawk, Hakan, Hugo's command grabs in Street Fighter 4. You only have to do like a 210 rotation, not a full 360. So I've been doing that. You know, I've played a lot of Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Kart 64 on this. You know, Diddy Kong Racing, where you're going back and forth with drifting. Same thing for Mario Kart, and it still works super well. I wish there was some like investigation work I could do to find whose controller this was. They did a good job maintaining it, and it was such a good deal buying it as a kid. One thing that I definitely, one memory as a kid though that I definitely have worked on, I guess, is, yeah, I'm not really a picky eater, and obviously as a little kid there were things that I might have not have tried at first, but thankfully because of my dad and my mom, they helped me a lot try different things. I'll never forget one time my dad was eating a double cheeseburger in the car at McDonald's, and you know, I was like, oh, it's got like, you know, onions on it and ketchup. I used to eat plain cheeseburgers, but my dad is, you know, he got me to venture forth for stuff like that. It's crazy to think, like, you know, with a double cheeseburger, because I'll never forget trying that as a little kid, got me to try other things with, you know, like onions and pickles on them and stuff like that. Just in general. One thing growing up though was that I never really put spices on my food, or seasoning or spices. You know, a bit of salt and pepper. I think as a kid you're curious about why is salt and pepper at every restaurant table in general. And so, you know, you're just kind of messing around. You're like, oh, I'll try it, and then it's kind of a 1-for-1 there. You're like, oh wow, if I put a little bit of salt on my fries, they might taste even better, right? Pepper, I'll never forget. I think what got me to recognize how good pepper is as a seasoning was elementary school mac and cheese, which is so funny because, you know, it's obviously they have to make it for a ton of kids. So, you know, they often, you know, it looks like they value like the quantity of the little amount of time it takes to make it. But I always remember how much pepper they put on it, and for a good reason. It's a good seasoning, and to this day I'll try to add a little bit of pepper to my mac and cheese. And so, you know, when I got older, I think a lot of people in the 2020s just kind of picked up a different, you know, like a new, you could say, hobby or trade. You know, there was a lot of learning. You know, unfortunately, you know, when we had the lockdown, the pandemic, it was a really serious, you know, instance, and I do think it's so sad to hear about, you know, all the travesties that happen. One thing about human spirit that's something to reflect on, is that even in the midst of that, it is great to hear that, you know, the human ambition to learn new things was happening, to keep going, right, to define new things in life. And mine actually became, I started cooking more. And my dad, he showed me, you know, how to operate a grill. And it all really started from there. You know, just like from as a kid, where my parents were introducing me to different foods. After that, I started to have the goal of, like, can I match what I cook with what I eat at restaurants? And I just started, like, recognizing that while I wasn't picky growing up, especially, you know, I got into my teens and older, I was like, I was fine with the food I had. But obviously, I always recognized that a lot of food at restaurants tasted a bit better. I'm talking mainly about cooked food. You know, I guess you could get a bowl of cereal at a restaurant. Someone's probably got that idea. I have actually seen, yeah, there actually have been places where you like cereal bars. But, you know, I recognized, you know, for a while, like, wow, okay, there's something at restaurants where it just tastes a bit better, whether it's like the pasta you get or the sandwich. But then after getting into cooking more, I knew it has something to do with the prep, right? The way these workers and professionals are trained. I'm like, but what exactly are they doing differently? And I picked up that just a bit of seasoning can go a long way. And I remember my mom and my stepdad bringing that up years ago about like the how much just a bit of salt and pepper can bring out food. And actually that helps roll the ball for me to try out stuff with seasoning for a lot of the foods I was cooking. And we're talking like from onion and garlic powder on your chicken to putting a bit of cinnamon in your waffle batter, cinnamon and apple pie spice. I have recognized that, you know, a few weeks ago I talked about the beauty of creative toys like Lego, right? Or, you know, big trading card games. You know, those type of toys, they get the kid or, you know, the customer, they get the user to create their own paths, right? The creativity is such a key aspect. And so the people they are selling to can often find enjoyment of getting some type of new part to add to whatever story or whatever they're doing, right? Because, like, let's say, I want to build a giant city and then have, you know, my Godzilla toy destroy the Lego buildings. And then they actually add, like, you know, Lego sets with cars and stuff. You know, there's a lot of fun stuff when it comes to products and ambitions that align with creativity. And I've recognized that spices kind of do a similar thing with cooking. So not only was I recognizing, you know, some of those really good foods you eat at restaurants is because, I mean, they're cooked well, but they're also seasoned in a nice kind of delicate way. I say delicate, but, you know, there is a reason why a lot of the professional chefs can actually just kind of wing a bit, like be like, okay, add a bit more salt, right? And that's through vast trial and error. And I've enjoyed how much, just a bit of onion and garlic powder on chicken can bring it out. You know, Cowboy Kent Rollins is an awesome, genuine, down-to-earth person, him and his wife. And he recently mentioned chili powder on grilled chicken. And I can see how that can bring out the flavor in that food. And I'm definitely going to try that later this week. And, you know, it kind of, these past 5 years of getting more into cooking has got me to reflect more about, you know, how much that when you're able to try things, you know, and then add what you've learned to it, you know, just like, you know, Lego bricks or building a Pokemon deck, there's a lot of different combinations, and it's really cool to see what other people share that they've discovered. And, you know, some people will talk about how food is like a science. You know, you're kind of doing a bit of chemistry, and, you know, you're cooking at certain temperatures and stuff like that. And you know, in our community, I actually opened up a food channel. And with the food channel, I wanted people to kind of share their experiences. I think it's a good, like, kind of like a good forum for people to share what they've experienced in terms of knowledge. And I've seen some amazing stuff, and it goes down to really further exploring, what combinations are good with each other, not just for seasoning, but the flavors in general. It's my good friend Shaderu was talking about like a raspberry lemon cheesecake, and that sounds great. I want to make that soon. He made that recently, and I would love to try a combination like that. And so the kind of path of adding all these different seasonings, it not only has helped me in terms of like finding foods that I love and recognizing that there's so much more potential to them, but yeah, it's actually saved me a lot of money. Sometimes I might go to a restaurant because I like the way they, maybe make a steak or a chicken, and then when I discover how to do it in a similar fashion, yeah, you can save a lot there. I'm not against going out to restaurants, of course, but there always was that kind of ambition, like a borderline addiction to challenge. Like when I went to MU for a year, I was getting Chipotle a lot, and I do love Chipotle. I was just kind of wondering, like, could I make this at home? I definitely tried. I couldn't ever make it as good as Chipotle did, but I definitely got, beans, rice, got some meat, sour cream, tortillas. Yeah, I couldn't wrap a burrito like they do at Chipotle, just in general. But I do think that type of ambition, that I see in other people, or like I just mentioned with people that are cooking their own dishes, I think that's good to have. And it's cool that people share what they've experienced. There's a lot of cool, fun recipes online, fun recipes that your friends and family know. People always talk about, a relative's certain signature dish in cooking. My grandma, Mama, was always good at making mac and cheese, and my dad told me years later that she would use like the blocked Velveeta, and then she'd have like the noodles with it. She had like a bit of her own custom way of making it. And I remember my grandma, Gigi, she made amazing waffles growing up, to the point, I mentioned this a long time ago. Well, not like it's about under a year ago. And I just remember that we recently have been talking as a family about like what she was doing, and she was adding like egg whites to the waffle batter. And so then I started going out to the store and buying like egg whites, or just adding a bit more egg in general to my waffle batter. And yeah, that's a nice difference. But that's kind of fun. That kind of fun sense of wonder and discovery about what brings out certain flavors and textures. And then, like I said earlier, I've been trying some cinnamon and apple pie spice to that. I've also enjoyed, while I do like my live broadcasts, I've had people come on and we just talk, and they share certain things that they like, and I think food opens up really, because, we're all human beings and food is key to survival. It's amazing that this necessity can become such a universal language of understanding. And I've had people join that share these different cool combinations for drinks and food, and thankfully the streams are archived, so if I need to pull that up, I can go to it. But I enjoy it a lot, just in general, kind of hearing again the different perspectives. And I think at the end of the day, being more open-minded to food and drinks, and being a bit daring to try different combinations and not being afraid of failure, I think is big. The last thing in the world that you probably shouldn't want is wasted food. And it's cool that even back in the day, I remember, stories my dad would tell me that, in America, for families that, really made sure not to waste food, if they made biscuits in the morning and there was leftover dough, they would use it for dumplings and chicken and dumplings. And I love stuff like that. I remember, there's all these small things you don't think about much that make a big difference. Like I remember one time when I was growing up, my stepmom made really good mac and cheese, and I was like, oh my gosh, you did an amazing job. And she said, a little less milk and a little more butter. And that has stuck with me ever since. I mean, she's right. Like you take like a Kraft mac and cheese box, And if you add a little bit less milk than required, and you either try to maximize the butter or a little bit more, yeah, it does make a difference. It sounds like a no-brainer, but yeah, I think sometimes we do go so much by the box or the instructions, but it's okay to try a little bit outside of that box. And yeah, in this case, do that. And now I add a little bit of pepper, and it's pretty great. I think sometimes the off-brand foods, you know, people say, oh, it tastes the same factory. It depends. I think sometimes the off-brand products purposely actually take away a bit of salt to save money. That's why it tastes a bit different. There might be one or two small seasoning ingredients that are not there. And so I've kind of also recognized that some of the store brands, you know, if you do add a bit more salt or you add a bit more pepper, yeah, you technically, I guess, saved a bit of money, and it matches. But it's also like, at the end of the day, it's just showing the power of how different something as small you think as seasoning could make it. And I think that honestly full circles back to making sure that each day you don't beat yourself up, and you understand that, you know, just your existence alone, just saying hi to a few people, just catching up, asking how's your day, right, to a few friends and family members. It could just be one friend, it could just be one family member, but doing just even a little bit each day can make such a difference. And when you're trying to put something positive out in the world, yeah, I think that's a firm good, you know, belief to have about karma and putting just good out into the world. And you're putting good out into the world without, you know, the expectation that good things should happen to you. Don't worry about that. Just understand that, you know, putting that coin in the wishing fountain and hoping for a better tomorrow, that's already doing a lot. And just like a little bit of cinnamon and waffle batter, you can go pretty far with just a bit added. I love Mondays.